Hello, AI enthusiasts. Today, we're diving into the magical world of Python functions and modules. This is video 6 out of 20 in the Beginners series and Introduction to AI. Now think of functions as your personal gremlins doing tasks for you, and modules as the vortex filled with these pre-made gremlins. So first, we're going to go through the concept of defining and calling functions. So imagine that you actually have a repetitive task, like let's say you have to greet so many people. Now, instead of writing the same code again, you can actually create a function to greet them. So let's just sort of jump into it. So I've already opened up in my Jupyter lab a little code notebook, and we're going to call this definition summon name. I'm actually going to use summoning because we were talking about gremlins, and for those of you who are into that, it is a throwback to something from the late 80s, early 90s. So what I'm typing here is a little greeting. Star Bunny, by the way, for those of you who are paying attention, is actually a reference to this shirt, this little half star cloud, half rabbit that I built at the beginning of the year. And so you'll see here it says hello gremlin, and then we can actually call the function here. And so I would print summon, and then you'd input that name variable. And so in this case, let's use my name, Sean. So when I run this, it says, hello gremlin Sean, are you ready to dive into Star Bunny's course on AI? Now here, summon is our function or gremlin, and name is the information that we gave that function to work with. You'll also notice that I did a little weird thing here where there's this sort of curly bracket that has name. This is basically a way to pass in your function, basically put the user input into the string and embed it. In order for that to work, you also have to remember this little F flag here in the string. So just want to make sure that you guys are tracking that. So now that we know this, let's jump to the next segment of this conversation. So we've already done our script here, and now I want to teach you guys what it means to actually import a full-on module. So now we're going to work with NumPy. Now, high level, let's jump back to the concept of modules. Modules are like toolkits. For AI, we often use the NumPy toolkit for mathematical operations. So I can type import numpy as np, and I run that, and for me it works. If you didn't have this working, make sure to go back to your terminal and type pip3 install and then numpy. Now, of course, for me, this requirement was already satisfied, but if you got an error, it's probably because you just didn't have this. And now that we did this, I'm going to tell you that we should create an array of numbers, and this is how you do it. Numbers equals np, which is our shortcut for NumPy, and then I would call a function known as array. And then in array, all functions have sort of this open and close soft curly bracket. And then in that, I would then do a hard bracket, which denotes a list. And here I'm going to basically build my array of a bunch of even numbers. And then I'm going to actually try to calculate the average by invoking, again from the NumPy library, the mean function. And then I'm going to pass the variable that I just wrote up there. And then here I'll print, and then we'll do f. The average is, and then average. Now you'll notice that this is one of my favorite sort of constructions because it allows me to take variables passed in the block and actually have it inserted into the string output. Also, notice how we used np as a nickname for NumPy. This is purely to make your life easier. You can actually name it whatever you want, but a common construction is calling NumPy np. Now let's jump into pandas. So importing libraries with pandas is a really common pattern, again in CV and in ML, because pandas is sort of like a super smart librarian, and it helps us essentially organize and analyze our data. So let's look at import pandas as PD. I'm doing a little shortcut again. And this time I'm going to create a little data set. So data equals, and then I'm going to do open bracket. And then what I'm doing here is actually creating two data fields. So names, and bear with me, this is sort of just the structure that you would use. I'm watching the Foundation series, so I'm going to put Demerzel, one of my favorite characters. She is a mystery character. I will not spoil it, but I will leave some hints here, which is that when I want to make a sort of database of our ages, my age, if you remember from the last video, I said I was 900. We'll say Diamond result is 13,000 years old, and my friend Nick is 31. And after that, what I want to do is actually convert this data into data frame. So we'll call it df for data frame, and then I'm going to call the pandas library, call the data frame function, and then bind the data variable I just wrote above into that data frame. And then we're going to print that data frame. And let's see what it looks like. So here it's sort of thinking, and this is the output. And you'll see that now we have a neat table with names and ages. Here you can imagine that there is great power when we are dealing with massive data sets using, again, pandas. Finally, last but not least, I'm going to teach you how to work with NLP and specifically with Hugging Face. But of course, the goal of this video is just to understand the concept of, again, calling different types of Python modules and then the functions within them. So first, I want to make sure that you actually have the necessary library. So make sure you go into your terminal and type pip install transformers. Again, as you'll see for me, this requirement was already satisfied because I work with this pretty regularly for work. But now that I actually have my code block, what I'm going to do is pull from Hugging Face. Ironically, transformers is a library within Hugging Face, so it's sort of understood in the field that if you're using the transformers library, it's coming from Hugging Face. So I'm going to say from transformers, import pipeline. And pipeline is a specific set of, it's actually a function that you're calling. And what you're doing is actually, I'm creating a variable called classifier, and I'm storing the output of the function pipeline and actually identifying that I am interested most in sentiment analysis. Now what this does is essentially load a pre-trained model for sentiment analysis. Next, I'm going to get the result of that classifier, and now what we do is we take that classifier and we actually feed it a specific type of user input. So I'm going to use the answer or the question, I love learning how to make robotic sentience. So I just realized it's not a question, that's an exclamation. English is hard. So now let's print that result. And let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to run command, enter. And of course it has to do its thing. So when you get that little star, it again gives you insight that the code is working. It's saying that no model was actually successfully supplied. And we're running into a default distilled. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay. Pausing. Okay. Restarting this. It's actually not sentiment analysis. It's called text classification. So let's try that again. Okay, we're repausing this. So there's actually one line that you probably have to run to confirm that after we ran the pip install transformers code, you actually have to test this blob here in your terminal to make sure that it downloads the necessary tensors and config JSON in your local environment. I was running into some weird errors, and this is coming from the official documentation. Basically, just make sure that you have this. I'll have this link below for you, actually, to just make sure that you guys have this resource. So now I'm going to, again, run this chunk of code. Again, I'm using the pipeline abstract function, and I'm calling the sentiment analysis model or pre-trained model. And then the sentence that I'm putting in is, I love learning how to make robotic sentience. And actually, when I run this code, it identifies that label is actually positive, probably because it picked up on the word, love, learning. And that score is 0.996. So it's pretty sure that that is indeed a positive sentiment. And so here you can tell that the, machine tells us that our sentence overall has that positive sentiment. How cool is that? So there you have it. You've summoned the gremlins with our functions. We've unlocked the treasure chest and vortices with these modules, and we've even taught our own machine how to understand human feeling. That's the magic that happens when you experiment. So, playing around with these code snippets, making them your own, and embarking on your enchanting AI journey is just the first step. This is video 6 out of 20 in our beginner series, An Introduction to AI. By the end of the series, you'll be ready to learn more advanced concepts of AI and machine learning, which will allow you to elevate your career in tech and remain in demand on the job market. Happy coding, and may your code always be bug-free.